We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 86 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken in this chase, number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with the government money to teach them how to farm. This is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. On the West Coast, good evening in the mountain, good evening in the central, good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist Perspective, bringing you those Adocs hot topics and making the case for reparations. Making the case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And today, family, we're going to talk about in this segment, yes, we are, how 15 million acres of land was stolen and reassigned from Black people, from freedmen. That's a new term I will probably be using in lieu of American descendant of chattel slavery. Thanks to Prime, who came on my show in an earlier segment to explain the importance of referring to ourselves as freedmen. It packs just as much of a punch as American descendants of chattel slavery, while at the same time, it invokes a lot of pride in the name. And there was already a bureau established. Like, all we need to do is go reinstate all of what they decimated. It's already in position. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, as Antonia Edwards so eloquently stated on Politics in Black, which is a segment I just finished. And yeah, it was just rich to be over there with so many incredible comrades, so many original founders and co-founders of the Adocs movement. You know, if you're brand new to this movement, you don't understand who was inspired by the hashtag Adocs, by Yvette Carnell's teachings. We were inspired, and when we were told to be the solution, that's exactly what we went out here to be. So to my surprise, on Politics in Black, there sat Marlon Watson out of Chicago, Logic Supreme from Be the Power, Antonia Edwards out of Connecticut, Solidarity is her group, Tansy Travelista Flakes out of the CAP, okay, that's the Capital Accountability Project, the DMV, and then there was Chris Lodson from ARC in Sacramento, CJAC, here in this for the state of California. He takes cat naps just like the movement. I mean, that brother works so very, very hard. I don't know that he ever takes a break, but it was just rich. It was rich to be on Politics in Black, which has the lovely hostess Friday Jones and the brilliant Chad Brown. They're NAASD and NAASDLA. Like, to be invited onto that platform with the original founders. See, if you came late to the fight, we're glad that you're in the fight. We don't disparage you for being late. But I'm not about to allow our history to get whitewashed and how we came to be. How each of us decided, as Yvette constantly implored upon us, to go and be the solution. And this was a solution. Now, we've all kind of fractured and she's gone her own way. But these are all the other organizations that have been birthed out of that those original founders and co-founders of the Adocs movement, as inspired by the hashtag Yvette did create and the political education she created. So to just be on that show, it just reminded me of the inaugural conference, you know, the Adocs inaugural conference in Kentucky, when I finally got to meet so many of them in person. And I still have yet to meet so many of the comrades throughout the country. Getting this done in an epic way, I am just so esteemed and proud to be on the right side of history with each and every one of you. I mean, we have fallen out like brothers and sisters and fallen back in love with each other because there is one common cause with which we came together to do. That is the fight for reparations and a Black agenda with enforcements. And we're leaning in from all over the country. So shout out to all of the orgs out there, the grassroots orgs, not the ones that have been co-opted, who have sold out. I'm talking about the grassroots, because that is just how this movement is being built, from the bottom up. So, yeah, Friedman, I had Prime on, and he explained, you got to go check out that archive. It's now a part of the archives. That was my show at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Pacific Standard Time. But it was just rich. And, you know, he really didn't have to sell me much on the idea. Be the Power has done an amazing job of making, labeling ourselves what we once were upon our emancipation after, you know, winning the Civil War. that freedmen is just who we are. That's in the Constitution. It's already set, go. Okay, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So he didn't have to sell me hard, because Be the Power and those brothers have been massaging this idea. So it's just taken off. They've got Marlon now heading up Freedmen Chicago, and, you know, in other spaces that I can't really name, they are changing the name to Freedmen. So it's had a real big impression and influence on us, and even me from today's segment. I'm going to work very diligently to refer to us from henceforth as Freedmen. Okay? So, with that being said, family, please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Thank you for supporting my voice in the new Black media. Please know that I cannot see all of you. I am streaming live to 3 different platforms, and the only comments I can see is YouTube. So if you want to make a comment and be interactive in the exchange and have me acknowledge that you're in the space, you have to quit the other platforms and come over to YouTube in order for me to see you and to read your comments aloud during this segment. So I don't know what happened with Mr. John Burgess. I'm telling you, we're all just so busy being torn and pulled a million different directions. It's exciting, but exhausting at the same time. What's up, Trey X? I see you, family. Thank you for joining the live. Thanks to all of you here on the live, even those of you I cannot see. Yes, so I had him on as my guest. I told him he doesn't have to come on until 6:30 because I wanted to dig into this article, but he didn't respond. So I don't know if he's coming in here or not. John, if you're out there, you can hear me, text me, because I've got to leave this screen to start to unpack the article. I'll toggle back and forth, just to check to see if you're in the lobby. But the show must go on, family. The show. Listen, I'm so behind from the advocacy that I got to spend the weekends catching up on all of the things I want to talk about. And oh my God, it's just so much happening so fast all the time to Freedmen. I did good. That it just becomes like back to back to back to back segments. So this will be my last segment for today, because this will make 3. And usually by the time I've done 3, I've hit a wall and I'm tired. So I just want my PJs and to just, lay out after this one. So let's get into it. Welcome, one and all. Now, let's talk about how we went from 15 million acres to 1 million, how Black people lost their land. Now, this is an article from Atlanta Black Star dated June 30th, 2017. And of course, I'm going to be commenting in between. Okay. So if John doesn't show up tonight, we'll reschedule him. He was going to come over here and share his family's rich legacy of having been brought here as slaves during the gold rush and having amassed wealth that was stolen from them by eminent domain. And so, yeah, I hope and pray he's in the fight for reparations here with the Cali State Reparations Fight, the task force. And like I mentioned on Politics in Black, it is my solemn prayer that us being at that table is going to roll out some very precedented reparations for our people, for the freedmen all throughout the country. It is my solemn hope and prayer that it will set the precedent for what we will be getting on a federal level, which will be far more than what you get on the state. But why not get paid from everywhere? That's our solemn fight, and that's my solemn prayer. So if he doesn't get on the live tonight, I will reschedule with him to come back and share his story, because it is rich. So let's dig in. I'll be commenting in between. At its height, Black land ownership was impressive. At the turn of the 20th century, formerly enslaved Black people and their heirs owned 15 million acres of land, primarily in the South, mostly used for farming. In 1920, the 925,000 African American farms represented 14% of the farms in America. Sadly, things turned for the worse as 600,000 Black farmers were forced off their land, with only 45,000 Black farms remaining in 1975. Now, Black folks are only 1% of rural landowners in the U.S. and under 2% of farmers. That's what we've been reduced to, family. Of the 1 billion acres of arable land in America, Black people, freedmen, today own a little more than 1 million acres out of a billion. We own a little more than 1 million acres, according to AP. This is criminal. This is akin to how white folks and immigrants share in over 100 trillion household dollars as compared to freedmen and Black immigrants that share in 3 trillion. And of that 3 trillion, 2.3 trillion is shared by the top 10%. And the 90% of us, predominantly freedmen, share in less than $700 billion since COVID. We have been legislated into the anchor of the Titanic called America with 3 Ks to hold down this country with 3 Ks, capitalism with 3 Ks. And the Democrats and the Republicans have been complicit. Moving on. During the Obama administration, Lord, I got an earful about this Mickey Ficky right here. I cannot wait to do this segment, but I'm not going to jump ahead of myself. The U.S. Department of Agriculture settled with Black farmers for $2.3 billion for their long-standing claims of discrimination in farm loans and other government programs. Stop right there. $2.3 billion is all. That's criminal. As you recall at the top of my intro, I share with you that we are owed 104 trillion on the very low end and 735 billion recurring. And that's based on the math from Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax. So you can pick that up and crunch the numbers for yourself. Now, it's excluding a lot of stuff, as you hear at the top of the intro. But the bottom line is 2.3 billion is criminal. When upon emancipation, we had 15 million acres. What would that be worth in today's dollars? That is what they're due in terms of reparation. So, anywho, 2.3 billion for their long-standing claims of discrimination in farm loans and other government programs. Look at how long they had to whine and bemoan the situation to get this unjust 2.3 billion, which they still ain't been paid. Let's keep going. Over the years, Black people have lost their land through a number of circumstances. Ain't no circumstances. It's flat out land theft, including government action, deception, and a reign of domestic terror in the South that forced Black people from their homes through threats of violence and lynching. That terror and economic exploitation precipitated the Great Migration, which resulted in the uprooting of over 6 million Black people from the South and their relocation to the North, Midwest, and West between 1916 and 1970. Me speaking. for more of the same to occur, including eminent domain, government action, deception, and a reign of domestic terror. It wasn't just happening in the South, family. I got to turn on my fan. Give me a second. It wasn't just happening in the South. This is how you just recently saw Governor Newsom sign over Bruce's beach to the Bruce family, whose beachfront property was stolen from them by eminent domain. And it took them something like 28 years from the time they stole it to build this alleged park that was the premise of them stealing it in the first place by eminent domain. And so that's what people fail to understand. What happened in the South was happening all over the country to freedmen. So the Great Migration uprooted over 6 million Black people from the South and their relocation to the North, Midwest, and West between 1916 and 1970. How we lost the land is an untold story. An investigation by AP documented the process by which people were tricked or intimidated out of their property. In this study of 107 land takings in 13 southern and border states, 406 landowners lost over 24,000 acres of farm and timberland and 85 properties such as city lots and stores. The property, which today is owned by white people and corporations, is valued in the tens of millions of dollars. In recent years, groups such as the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in Atlanta and the Land Loss Prevention Project in Durham, North Carolina, receive new reports of land takings on a regular basis, while the Penn Center in St. Helena Island, South Carolina, has gathered 2,000 such cases. One story from the AP provides the context by which families lost their land to thievery and violence. Let me see if Mr. Burgess is there. No, he's not, so we're going to keep going. After midnight on October 4th, 1908, 50 hooded white men surrounded the home of a Black farmer in Hickman, Kentucky, and ordered him to come out for a whipping. When David Walker refused and shot at them instead, the mob poured coal oil on his house and set it afire, according to contemporary newspaper accounts. Pleading for mercy, Walker ran out the front door, followed by 4 screaming children and his wife, carrying a baby in her arms. The mob shot them all, wounding 3 children and killing the others. Walker's oldest son never escaped the burning house. No one was ever charged with the killings, and the surviving children were deprived of the farm their father died defending. Land records show that Walker's 2.5-acre farm was simply folded into the property of a white neighbor. The neighbor soon sold it to another man whose daughter owns the undeveloped land today. And to this day, they will not label the KKK, which sits up in the government. Yeah, they're definitely in Congress. I would venture to say even Biden is the KKK. Look at his benign neglect of Blacks in Africa, Blacks in the U.S., Blacks from Haiti. They have yet to label them a domestic terrorist group, while those of us in the fight for reparations in the trillions over multi-generations are labeled Black identity extremists and are censored and shadow banned all throughout social media. And yet we continue to show up for this fight. This was happening all over the country, family. The KKK is thick down here in Orange County in particular. Land is the most important asset people can own. And let me help you understand that Barack Obama was as complicit in making sure we lost our homes during his tenure when he chose to bail out Wall Street and would not, with our tax dollars, and would not regulate the banks and audit them to guarantee they were lending money back to us to restore the wealth we lost during the real estate market crash of 2008. And so this current day pandemic is designed to wipe out the rest of us from even existence. They are working to genocide freedmen in particular, to as few in number as the Indians, because they don't want to pay these reparations. They'd rather pay it to 1 million of us over 30 million of us. Certainly, and this is, let me go back. This is why I keep imploring upon us to not have a trifecta of either party. If there's a blue top, put in a red Congress. And don't come telling me, oh no, the Republicans. Who has been more racist against freedmen, Biden or Trump? Put it in the chat. Who's been more racist against freedmen, weaponizing immigration against us like albatross around our neck and giving away our reparations in the trillions to these immigrants and to line their own pockets while telling us no to our own repair, no end to qualified immunity? At least Trump was building a border wall to keep this immigration off of our necks. Oh, Biden is rushing it in order to neutralize our vote. So in 2022, don't show up to the polls, vote anybody but the Democrats into the Congress. And in 2024, a red top and a blue Congress. We have got to do that or we will never get the reparations. And as you can clearly see, since FDR, voting blue, no matter damn who, has not advanced the freedmen whose ancestors built this country with their lives. So it's futile to argue, oh, without a trifecta, you can't get reparations. We can't even get HR 40 signed as an executive order by Biden. So we got nothing coming in locking down the government. We got nothing left. All we've got is the weaponization of our vote. Back to the text. Certainly, for the rural society in which many African Americans traditionally have lived, land represented prosperity, intergenerational wealth, family, and community. According to the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, you said, land can be a vital part of cultural and social identities, a valuable asset to stimulate economic growth, an essential component to preserving natural resources and building societies that are inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. And what did you see Biden do? He, when asked about reparations, started talking about making the Indians whole, which many of us are indigenous to this land. That was a whole nother trick that I don't know enough to talk about to change our identity through this Indian narrative. Something in that whole indigenous thing that they co-opted and weaponized against us to make us black. Anywho, when asked about reparations, you heard Biden make a case for Hispanic migrants. When you hear a lot of the Democrats, especially the liberals, talking, they're pretending as if we migrated here. They're doing everything they can to whitewash history to avoid paying this justice claim in the trillions over multi-generations. They're weaponizing everything against us. But our God is bigger, and we're leaning in. God never said the weapons wouldn't form. God promised they would not prosper. Back to the text. It's more about land as a home. It's about economics and culture all rolled up into one, Jenny Stevens, executive director of the Center for Heirs Property Preservation, said. Based in Charleston, South Carolina, the organization serves 15 counties in the Palmetto State, including the Low Country, where Gullah Geechee have struggled to hold on to their ancestral homelands on the Sea Islands in the face of development, gentrification, and corporate intrusion. For generations, families have had the land procured through the blood, sweat, and tears of their ancestors until many are forced to sell it. The center promotes sustainable land use to help historically underserved families realize the wealth-building asset of their land and prevents heirs property owners from losing their land. Under the concept of heirs property, a form of communal land ownership found among rural communities of the South, both Black and white, numerous heirs of the original landowners are co-owners of the land, each owning a percentage share. They may be 20, 30, 40 or more people scattered around the country, and in some cases have never visited the land and may not even know they are co-owners. The problem arises when corporations and developers entice family members to sell their share, becoming family members themselves and forcing a partition sale, a court-mandated auction sale of the land, all without notice to the other family members. This is unreal. It is a real issue, said Tish Lynn, Director of Communications at the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. Lynn said that across the Southeast and throughout the country, land has been in the hands of African American families through heirs titles passed from generation to generation without a clear title to the land. Rather, land was passed through oral tradition without access to the judicial system or the ability to hire a lawyer. Although heirs property is a rural characteristic rather than a racial one, for Black people who have had more than their share of exploitation, the suffering is compounded. I talk about it as an injustice. We call it legalized theft. We're trying to level the playing field by clearing the title, Lynn said. Jenny Stevens noted that while the issue of land loss is not new, it is receiving more attention these days. Indigenous Black landowners now find themselves grappling with the same land loss issues facing Native Americans. Once thought to be the most unproductive land, now everyone wants to live in the Sea Islands area. Lynn calls the Charleston coastal area a magnet, with 40 new people coming every day, and the attraction of industry. Boeing, Volvo, and the desirability of living here has logarithmically increased the pressure of development. Hurricane Hugo helped shine a light on issues facing the coast as forests amid these heirs' properties were destroyed. With few laws on the books to protect landowners, it is easily lost and families torn apart. Shout out to those of you who believe that freedmen are lazy, shiftless, no good, and no count. And to those of you, the Democrats, Kabami and Republican Tim Scott and Jim Crow O'Biden, who said racism doesn't exist in this country. That's history. Shout out to both the Democrats and Republicans alike who don't want true American with 3 Ks history taught to our children. But you don't mind the Holocaust being shoved down their throats. You don't mind any atrocity to any group of people to be taught in the school system. But that of the freedmen, the story of the freedmen, that can't be taught when we're still living its vestiges and the bullshit is still ongoing. Shut it down. Shut it down, family. We started to look at the tax assessed value of the land of all the individuals we provide legal advice and counsel, Stevens said, of the clients whose land her organization seeks to protect, which is roughly 300 people each year. Over the last year, the tax assessed value is $38.4 million, she noted. Now, you're talking the Deep South. Which of the Gullah Geechee people could actually afford to pay this level of taxes? Because white folks have decided they want to gentrify them all the way up out of there, and they'll go into default because they can't afford these type of taxes. Back to the text. Hilton Head Island is the most salient example of once predominantly Black-owned land that is now in majority white hands, due in no small measure to partition sales. Yeah, when you look at Bruce's Beach, it took them 100 years to give it back. I'm saying they should be repaired for loss of land use from the time it was stolen from them by eminent domain. That land today is worth $70 million. And the home values on that land are multi-million-dollar homes. So I can't wait to see in what way they're going to compensate them for 100 years of land loss usage. Beaufort County, South Carolina, which includes Hilton Head, was 57% Black in 1950. But is now 77% white, as the Nation reported, with Black farmers falling from half of all farmers throughout the state to only 7% today. For heirs property owners, clearing the title to the land is a key to helping them use it as an economic engine. When natural disasters occur, they cannot access FEMA funds because they don't have clear title. You can't apply for any other housing rehab programs that require clear title. You see, this is the way they legislate us to the bottom of the Titanic as the anchor of their capitalism, in which they continue to kill and steal from freedmen. Where does that leave you? You need a bucket or you have to move, Stevens said. Oftentimes, landowners don't come and ask for help until there is an emergency or there has been an increase in the tax assessment of the property. If people don't receive help in title issues, the land will be lost. The land will become a gated community. Boeing is expanding. Volvo is expanding. Some of our folk are already being asked, do you want to sell your land? Well, when you neutralize us economically, how are we supposed to eat? This government at every branch has put the freedmen between a rock and a hard place. If they sell, they have no generational inheritable wealth to give to their children. But what does it matter if their children can't afford to keep the property? Because our own affirmative action has been weaponized against us to deny us job opportunities. So we suffer the highest rates of unemployment and underemployment. Degrees be damned. The land loss these Black populations are experiencing is a gentrification issue transposed onto rural communities, as Lynn noted. God, I'm trying not to wish a hurricane on those white thieves, especially if there's any Gullah Geechee around. But that popped in my mind, to pray for a hurricane strong enough to wipe it all out. But that would mean the Gullah Geechee people, so I can't go there. Once the land is lost, it is not left green anymore. Now you see these condos with asphalt. It does not only impact the landowner, but entire communities. She noted, adding that people who move there because they love the way the land looks are themselves changing the way the land originally looked. There is some relief in sight for heirs property owners in South Carolina, and what could signal a trend for the rest of the South. In 2016, then Governor Nikki Haley signed the Clementa C. Pinckney Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, named in honor of the state lawmaker among the 8 murdered in an act of racial terror at Charleston's Emmanuel AME Church in 2015 by that glacier donkey domestic terrorist, Dylan. The law allows co-tenants to buy out the shares of land speculators, making it difficult for land to be sold through the courts, and allows judges to consider factors such as the sentimental, ancestral, and fair market value of the property. While the Pinckney Act is one example in the right direction, throughout the nation, Black wealth is continuously undercut. For example, the Great Recession and the attendant subprime mortgage crisis that preyed upon Black and Latino homeowners through institutional racism and discriminatory lending was a period of historic losses of wealth. I'm not going to be reading about Hispanics. So give me a second to make that adjustment. They are doing far better than freedmen, and they are the albatross around the necks of freedmen. And now, everywhere you turn, even in Black spaces, folks expect me to give a damn. They expect me to give a damn about our affirmative action and civil rights, holding down the Hispanics as the Hispanics climb right over top of us politically and economically. We've got more education than they do, but they are being set up with our reparations to be our new white oppressors. Some, not all. So as I'm reading, give me a chance to make the adjustment when the Atlanta Black Star starts to pivot about the woes of a Hispanic people that should not even be our issue had they repaired us and left the repair alone and not lynched us and burned down our Black Wall Streets, we would still be second. We would still be second. Hispanics are now second, and they're working feverishly to make Asians right up there with them. Pretty soon, the Asians will be second and the Hispanics will be third, and we are fourth. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about USC. One of my sister friends just sent me an article that I'm going to unpack. I got to do the research for it before I can bring it to you. But get this. Hold on one second. Okay, so she sent me how USC is apologizing and awarding honorary degrees to Japanese American students whose education was disrupted after World War II. This is the weaponization of immigration I keep telling y'all about, and this is why we must weaponize the vote and socialize the suffering. They've done nothing honorary for having redlined us into environmentally racist communities, from land theft of the magnitude in which I'm speaking today, for the preschool to prison pipeline, wherein they take public school dollars and put them in the white public schools to give the white folks a private education with our public school dollars. Unemployment, underemployment, miseducation, lack of home ownership, and lack of business ownership. No apologies coming from nowhere. Nothing honorary to make us whole. They're literally going to give them honorary degrees to give them position over us. So miss me with the people of color, miss me with the Black, miss me with the African American. From now on, I'm converting everything to Freedmen, and I'm leaving the other groups out, as these Black publications should be doing. They clearly don't know the data. They clearly don't know the Democrats are working to extinct us to as few in number as the Indians. According to the Urban Institute, Black families lost 31% of their wealth between 2007 and 2010. As a result, the racial wealth gap continues, and Black folks find themselves hamstrung, unable to build for the future and pass down their legacy to successive generations. If you can get people to maximize their potential through land, they don't need a handout, which is why they won't. Had they left us alone, even after stealing our reparations and getting into white folks and white immigrants by way of the Homestead Act for 93 years, we'd have inheritable generational wealth to pass down to our children. If you can get people to maximize their potential through land, they don't want us maximizing our potential. They want us as the anchor, the permanent bottom cast in the country our ancestors built with their very lives. Through heinous chattel slave labor, the worst of its kind known to the free world. They don't need a handout, Jenny Stevens said, underscoring the importance of owning the land and building family wealth. It is time for your child to go off to college. Maybe you have had trees growing for a while. One person who has clear title, they had the trees cut off their land and were able to send their children to college without student loans. That money was not a loss to their family. Literally, that wealth was passed to the family. She added, that's a very simple example of wealth building. The fact these children can come out of a college without a student loan. You're starting out and not in the red. And if your parents manage that land, you get to go back and cut the trees again. If you have clear title, you can get a mortgage and a home equity line of credit. Let me come over here and see what y'all got to say about it. That ends my Michael Jordan. I see you, fam. Thank you for joining the live. Terry Lewis. And to all of you on the live, I thank you so very much for joining me. Family, I'm just speechless. I am just done. I was reading that article real time with you guys. We got a lot of work to do. If you want to join the fight, wherever you are in the country, you want to join the fight for reparations, the rep perspect, I'm putting it. It took them 100 years to give back Bruce's Beach. We need all hands on deck. So that's my Gmail to Gmail me if you'd like to get involved with the fight, the Freedman fight, as I mentioned prior. Freedman is going to be my new lexicon since being schooled by Prime Legend on my earlier vid. I overstand it and I receive it and accept it. So it's a new day, Freedman, and we need all hands on deck. And with that being said, I want to pray us out so I can get some much needed rest. There'll be more to unpack. I'll try to get to it sooner than the weekend. But if I don't, it's because I'm advocating heavily for Adocs. For Freedman. I may use them interchangeably. I'm so used to Adocs. But anywho, I'll do my best to stick with the Freedman moniker, which we are. And with that being said, family, I want to thank you for spending time with me and for allowing me to share about more of the puckery and why I'm often over here making the case for reparations until my last breath. Our children and our children's children and our entire lineage will not make it if we don't pick up this fight. And it's an exhausting but rewarding fight. I believe once we reach critical mass, this reparations will come in a magnanimous way. In the same way, I believe if we don't continue this fight, we will become as extinct as the Indians, because that is a 100-year plan that's being played out right before our eyes. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever Freedmen and its allies are, God truly is, because family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. And with that being said, family, until the next segment, know that I love you black and I love you strong. And I wish you a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening until we meet again. Stay tuned for the outro. Peace, family.